What is your bow tie? Yes, I know it's an odd question, but what is your bow tie? Now, you probably won't know the answer to this question right now, as you probably don't know what this question means. But I promise that after this talk, you will start to see bow ties in a different light. So, some context as to why bow ties are so prevalent and what it has to do with happiness can be explained through my journey to becoming a Scrum Master, as my journey was a very, very unique one. So it all started off in fashion in my hometown of Toronto. And I was in fashion for over a decade. I was making clothes for others. And it brought me so much joy. It sparked so much joy for me to make clothes that gave others the courage and confidence. And I love to see that transformation. And so I ran with this, and I was designing and ran my own company for a long time. But unfortunately, in 2004, the industry here in Canada imploded, and I was left for broke to feed my family. So I had been speaking to a friend of mine who is in the tech industry, and he mentioned something about needing a database administrator and how, the database administrators were making lots of money. I was fascinated by this. And to make a long story short, I decided to make a transformation. And I went back to school and studied database administration for a year. And 6 months after graduating, I became a Unix administrator. And this gave me the confidence to feed my family, as well as to test the waters as I reinvented myself. So I continued on this journey as a systems administrator in tech for approximately 9 years. But there was one story in particular that shifted my mindset forever. And so it started off at a workplace where I was a systems administrator. I was working in a basement, and it was really gloomy. There wasn't a lot of sunlight coming in. There was, that fluorescent lighting. Okay, maybe it wasn't that dark, but it was gloomy. I had this aura that just didn't sit with me well. And one day I decided I didn't want to come into this anymore. I wanted something to change. So how could I make myself want to come into work? How can I make myself more happy to be able to be present? And so one day after work, I showed up at a retail store, because we all love retail therapy when we're, in the dumps. And I saw a bow tie, and it made me smile. And I thought to myself, maybe this is something that could turn my outlook on going into work around. And so then I thought about it some more. And then I decided, hey, let's make it a thing. So why not on Hump Day? So for those of you who are unfamiliar on Hump Day, this is the Wednesday that lands in the middle of the week. And so when you hit Wednesday, it's the hump that you get over to slide you into the weekend. So on Hump Day, I would wear a bow tie, and it would give me that boost of happiness and positivity that I needed to show up to work. And so I showed up at work in a bow tie on the first Wednesday. And what I didn't realize is I got this positive reaction from others. Like, Antoni, what's with the bow tie? And it gave me this realization to reflect on, hey, maybe this is a positive thing. but uh, it became an actual thing. On Wednesday, I would wear a bow tie. People started to smile. People started to be happy. And it got to a point where others started to really dig into this. And they started to wear bow ties as well. And people were dressing up on top of that. And it was not only a catalyst to happiness for every Wednesday, but it was the catalyst to happiness for the rest of the week. And this was my entry into fostering happiness into the workplace. But what I also didn't know is that it was the trigger to my mission to happiness years later when I was a Scrum Master. But I didn't know how big this would be in my life. So after that job, my third layoff, yes, I know what you're thinking. Guy can't get a break. But I started to think about how I can reinvent myself again. And so I found my happiness in cloud computing. And so I had my head in the clouds for 7 years, going through different roles like cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, and eventually a cloud trainer. And when I got laid off, yet once again, I know it just kept on happening. I don't know what it was, but I got laid off once again. And I decided to start my own company as a cloud trainer, making my own certification prep courses for people who are studying Google Cloud certifications. But what I didn't know is that after 2 years of doing this, I was extremely lonely. And so I decided that I wanted to get back into the workforce and start working more with people. So I started to research again, what is it that brings me joy? Because we all love to show up on a Monday morning and love what we do. So there I was looking for a role, and I stumbled upon the role of a Scrum Master. And I was fascinated. I was so full of joy when I saw this, because I felt that this role was made for me. It was designed for me. So I was like, this is what I'm going to do. So I did the necessary training, the usual 2-day course, read some books, and then I updated my resume, put it out there. So there I was, searching for a job as a Scrum Master. And so I decided to take a different approach and put a post out on LinkedIn, because I figured, I have a fairly great, reasonable amount of people in my network. So I decided to put out a post, and it got a lot of traction, to a point where there was a leader and a friend of mine that had reached out from my very first tech job. And this, mind you, this was 18 years ago. I was fascinated. I was like, wow, this person really wants to help me. So he said, Antoni, give me your resume and we're going to see if we can find you a job. Long story short, after 10 interviews with 3 separate teams, I landed my first job as a Scrum Master. And this brought me so much joy. I was over the moon. It was beautiful to walk in on a Monday knowing that I can really help teams and work with people and have fun. But when I landed that job, I was very grateful. And so I wanted to reach out to that leader that had done his, what he said he would do. And I invited him to dinner because, I wanted to be grateful. And at the same time, I love food, and I wanted to share my love for food with that leader. So we went to this amazing Italian restaurant. We had some beautiful rigatoni. We had some wine. And not only did I thank him, but I wanted to ask him a certain question. And that was, what did I do that was so memorable 18 years ago that you thought to reach out to me for a job? He said, Antoni, I've been watching you for the past 3 years on LinkedIn, and I love the way you show up with your positive attitude, with your smiling face, always celebrating other successes. And I wanted that for my team. So it got me thinking, was happiness the catalyst to my success all these years? And was positivity the reason why others were hiring me? And if it was, what is it that I'm doing specifically to spark positive emotion in teams? And this started my journey to find out how we could start being more purposeful about bringing happiness into the workplace. Now, I wanted to switch gears for a second. I wanted to ask you, the audience, when was the last time you had a moment of gratitude? And I want you to take 10 seconds to think about that one thing. Now, as we all know, you can think about a lot of things, but what really holds ground is if you write it down. So I would invite the audience to join the Slido, and you can scan the QR code in the top left-hand corner and write down the one thing that you're currently grateful for, whether personal or professional. Yeah, better quality of life, family, garden. I love gardens. They're so fruitful. Freedom to act, health. Wow, so many beautiful, beautiful things. Appreciation, fast internet. Yeah, we all can't live without it. Making impact at work, heating. Yeah. Wow, escaping London to live in Berlin. I'd love to hear more about that story. Okay. So now I wanted to ask the audience, how did you feel while reading this? And raise your hand if you had a positive feeling. Give me a thumbs up or an emoji. And if you'd like to share your moment of gratitude, I would invite you to speak up.
I shared that in the beginning with the people from Serious Scrum who organized this amazing conference and come together of people from around the world sharing stories. I think it's great. And all the speakers who prepared and who are able to share the stories and who were able to engage us in some ways. And I would also appreciate very much if some of the people would be more visible on camera and would be more active to be a role model, as we usually say as change agents.
Yeah, we as Serious Scrum appreciate our community as well.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to move back to the slides. Okay. So this was a great experiment. And this is an experiment that I actually used with a team that I was working with. At the time, I was looking into positive psychology. And I came across some research on gratitude. And it showed that if you write down 3 things that you are grateful for every single day for 30 days, you will actually have a shift in your mindset to be happier. And I found this fascinating. So I wanted to share this with the team that I was working with. So after Daily Scrum, I shared this news. I shared this research. But what I also did is I shared my moment of gratitude with the team. The fact that I got to be there every day with them. The fact that, it was amazing to work with them every single day. And so the next day, I decided to share another moment of gratitude. But this time, I invited them to share a moment of gratitude. And sure enough, a couple people decided to join in. But what was interesting is the next day, it actually became a thing. And the day after that, and the day after that, and it created this ripple effect of gratitude. And it was amazing. And it got to a point where they actually labeled it the gratitude corner. So after Daily Scrum, every single day, people shared a moment of gratitude at the gratitude corner. And it became so effective at what it did that one of the team members decided to bring it home and share that with their family during dinner. And sure enough, it brought the same amount of joy that it did to the team as it did with the family. And it really got people engaged. People started to get together more. They started to understand each other more. And they were really engaged with their work on top of that. And this was amazing to me. So now I wanted to switch gears again and ask you, what is the percentage of people that you think are disengaged in the workplace? And I'm going to go ahead and put up the Slido again. If you already have it up, feel free to go to it.
How do you define disengaged?
Where you're not really present. You're doing the absolute minimum.
Well, I think resilience is also a little bit connected and constant pace with protecting yourself and keeping a constant pace and agility, isn't it? One of the principles. Otherwise, people would burn out, isn't it?
Well, what I was looking for is more, as we call it now, is quiet quitting. How many people do you think? What's the percentage of people worldwide, mind you? Okay, we have a tie here with 38% of you said 42%, and 38% of you said 60%. Okay. And the answer here is actually 59%. And this was a study that was done from the Gallup State of the Global Workplace Report of 2023. So 59% of people were not engaged. They were quiet quitting. But what I found even more fascinating is that 18% on top of that were actively disengaged. So they were loud quitting. They were doing the absolute bare minimum just to get a paycheck. And that actually had me a bit worried. I mean, how many people out there are actually working for the weekend? So on the topic of engagement, I wanted to move into a topic that we all know and love, retrospectives. Because as we know, this is a key way to spark engagement. But what if I told you that I decided as an experiment to kill the retrospective? It was making the team so uncomfortable. It was making the team upset, and it wasn't bringing any value. So I thought to myself, hey, well, let's try this. And so I asked the team, I said, okay, let's cancel the retrospective for the next month or two, and then we'll revisit it to see exactly what happens. And I know a lot of you are thinking, Anthony, you are crazy to remove the retrospective. What's the matter with you? But I thought, wasn't bringing happiness to the team. Let's try it out. Let's see what happens. Worst case scenario, we go back to the retrospective. So we canceled the retrospective. Obviously, it made me a bit sad. But something started to happen that was really interesting for me. And people started to silo within the team. So people were pairing up, not talking to each other, and caused a sort of ripple effect of removing engagement. And this was really fascinating to me. And as time went on, it got worse. And people weren't talking to each other. The quality of work was going down. And it got to a point where one of the teammates said, Antoni, it's a dumpster fire and we need an intervention. So you can imagine, as the Scrum Master, what was going through my mind. And I couldn't actually put it into words. So I decided to give you a visual of what it looked like in my mind. I mean, holding a burning piece of bread, really just out of it, having a woman riding an ostrich through the office. I mean, it was chaotic in my mind. I was like, what am I going to do? I mean, we can sit here and talk about this slide all day, but I'm sure a lot of you understand exactly how I felt. And so I decided, okay, we need to talk about this sooner than later. So the day came to discuss on bringing back the retros. And after a long discussion, we had a resounding yes. And it brought the communication back to the team. There was more collaboration than before. There was more communication. But what they wanted to focus on was the work and just the work. And as we started to do that, the quality of work went up, the happiness came back, and they were looking forward to the retrospective. So in my mind, I was jumping for joy. And although this experiment was kind of a failure, if you look at it from my eyes, it actually proved to be successful in the end. Now, what was really interesting is what I'm about to tell you next. So a few months into the job, I decided to reach out to my leader again. And as we enjoyed a beautiful dinner the last time, I thought, hey, let's go out for dinner again. So we went out to that same fancy Italian restaurant, had some amazing pasta, some wine, and over dessert, I remember we had this beautiful cannoli. And he asked me a specific question. It was a thought-provoking one too. He said, Antoni, how are you always so happy? I mean, every time I look at you, you're always smiling. You never have anything bad to say. It's just, you're so happy. Why? And I don't know. I think I gave him some lame answer. I wasn't really sure. But it started to make me think that how could why was it that I'm so happy? And it wasn't just for me, but how could I empower others to be just as happy as me and scale that happiness? I mean, imagine walking into a team where everyone is happy. Doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. So I started to think, how could I scale happiness? And the realization kicked in that I needed to figure this out if I wanted to scale that happiness. And so I started digging into some research behind happiness at work and how positive psychology plays a huge factor. And so digging into that positive psychology, I found some really fascinating facts and some really fascinating research. And to my surprise, happiness at work was a lot more than the fluffiness that many people seem to think it is. And so I wanted to share some data to open your eyes as well. Now, Sean Acor, a research scientist and the world's leading expert on the connection between happiness and success, has shown through his research that when we are positive, we show 31% increase in productivity. I'll let that sink in for a little bit. Some more great research. According to a Reich survey, it was called From Positivity to Productivity. And this was done in 2019. It showed that happier employees demonstrated a 79% lower burnout rate than others who were unhappy. And as we all know, burnout is such a huge topic these days. And when we start to focus on not overloading our people with work, they produce. They're happy. They want to come to work. Last piece of data I want to share with you is a research program run by the Eye Opener Institute for People and Performance. They've been running this since 2005. It's called Happiness at Work. And there were 60,000 respondents from over 180 countries. And it showed that happier people take 10 times less sick leave. So this data is simply mind-blowing. And through this data and the positivity experiments that I ran, it gave me the clear vision of a model that could support my vision and mission to happiness. And that model is called the Happiness Blueprint. Now, this is not a framework or a set of principles, but a model that is fit to run positivity experiments that hit key points that I have found over time to bring happiness to teams. And so it's displayed as an acronym, IMPACT, and it provides those key points I had just mentioned. And so I'm going to go through all of the letters and what they stand for. So the first letter is I for inspiration. Now, with inspiration, this is about establishing a clear, inspiring vision for the team to align with. It's about breaking down the vision into SMART goals. For those of you who are unfamiliar, these are parameters that help ensure that your objectives are reachable within a certain time frame. And this is to regularly review and celebrate progress toward those goals. Because achieving goals is great, but celebrating those goals are even better, especially when you're achieving them. Okay, the next letter is M for mindset. Now, mindset, think of it as fostering a positive, inclusive culture. We're encouraging open communication and creating a safe space for team members to express ideas and concerns without fear of judgment. So we're promoting a growth mindset where learning and improvement is valued over perfection. We're recognizing and celebrating individual and team achievements. And we're also providing positive feedback, because that's what we do as Scrum Masters and coaches. Next letter is P for power. Now, this is not meant to highlight power over others, just to be clear. This is about empowering the team members. So we're providing team members with the resources and support they need to succeed. So we're encouraging team members to take ownership of their work and make decisions autonomously. I'm sure you've heard that a couple times. We're also offering opportunities for skill development and career growth. The next letter is A for alliance. Now, alliance is about encouraging collaboration and teamwork. It's about building relationships. So scheduling regular team meeting or team building activities and workshops and improving those relationships and trust amongst the team. We're fostering collaboration and iterative improvement. And we're using these activities and workshops to reflect on team performance and really identifying those areas for improvement. And the second last letter is C for care. And this is about maintaining psychological safety. We've heard it so many times, but I found that this is a key aspect to happiness. And this is where we're addressing conflicts and challenges within the team, and we're facilitating healthy resolution. We're communicating clearly and with respect for each other. We're encouraging empathy and understanding amongst the team members by promoting active listening and open-mindedness. We're also providing support for resources for those team members so that they can manage stress and maintain the work-life balance that we all love to know. And the last letter, T, is for transformation. Now, transformation is all about measuring and iterating because, let's face it, we all love metrics. Everyone does. And so we use these performance metrics like customer satisfaction to track team progress and identify those areas of improvement. It's also looking at feedback from the team members to evaluate the effectiveness of these positivity experiments that we're running. And again, it's about continuously refining and adjusting the process based on the data and feedback that we're gathering. Now, with the impact model, you can create and use positivity experiments that feed into each key letter in the model to help teams become happier in those areas and more productive because of it. Because as we all know, every team is different in nature. So the experiments will be different because of it for each and every team. And this is why each blueprint will be unique to each and every team. Okay, so I'm gonna try and inspire you with some positivity experiments that you can run with your teams. Some experiments that I've run that have been very, very successful. So the first experiment, which is some low-hanging fruit, is showing up to every meeting on camera with a smile and a positive attitude. And you'd be surprised how far this goes. This is, encouraging open communication. This is modeling a safe space for team members and showing that you can express ideas without the fear of judgment. You're also developing trust because you're showing commitment to showing up every single day on camera, smile on your face, positive attitude. And it hits parts of the model through mindset, power, and care. And true story, I show up in the office one day and one of the team members comes up to me, says, "Hey, Antoni, how are you?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Oh, I'm John." "Oh, nice to meet you, John. How did you know it was me?" "Oh, because I see you on camera every single day." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, "I don't see you on camera though." He's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna try and be better about it. And I'm gonna come on camera." And guess what happened? It came on camera. So a really great experiment to run. And again, low-hanging fruit. And this sounds so simple and easy, but it has a great impact. Okay, moving on to the second experiment. And again, this is some low-hanging fruit. Scheduling a team outing outside of the office, and this is key here, where work is not discussed. So getting out and going to place to eat, a bar, wherever you can, to discuss freely about not work, but the things that matter to the team, to the individual team members. What do they like to eat? What do they like to drink? What are their hobbies? Do they have any family that they love? What are some things that they love to do outside of work? So this is encouraging open communication. It's fostering a safe space for team members to express ideas and really what matters to them. And it's also encouraging collaboration and teamwork because let's face it, we all have things that we all love to do. And so when they cross paths, Now all of a sudden you have something to talk about and some connection. And so this is also developing trust. And again, this hits the model through mindset, alliance, and care. Because you're building those relationships. Okay. Last experiment I want to share is journey lines. And here is an example of my journey line. And I read about this technique in a book called Coaching Agile Teams by Lisa Adkins. If you don't have this book, I highly recommend that you go out and get it. And this allows people to understand each person's past and what they've achieved and what they've learned and what they were disappointed in and what they're proud of. And it helps you get under the surface a bit and to be a little bit more vulnerable with each other. And I found that this was so impactful. It was beautiful to watch. And it hits almost every single point in the impact model: mindset, power, alliance, and care. And the relationships that grew from this were astounding. They were really amazing. So if your team is open to it, highly recommend that you try it. Now, although we love to help teams become happier, we must always remember to practice these actions ourselves so that we can model them for others. So find what makes you happy, that resonates with others, as I did with Bowtie Wednesday. And you can do it to lead the way to a happier and positive workplace. Give people something to strive for, something to look forward to no longer dread Mondays, but to revel in it. So again, I ask you, what is your bow tie? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antoni. That was pretty incredible.